I love talking about this topic, so I'm super excited. And more importantly, it's a topic that unfortunately I feel is not that much covered. We talk a lot about AI, about machines, automation, but here I am to talk to you about users' love. And when we talk about love, it's about emotion, and it's all about how can we create emotional connection between users and the product, because indeed, it's the secret for success. All right, so before we start, I want you just to get you in the mood to think about the best meal you had. Hey, could you think about the best meal you had, let's say, in the last 3 months? Get the time to get your favorite meal. As people are sitting, you have the time to think about that. Now, actually, the reality is that I'm not curious about the meal, but I'm curious about knowing what made you pick that meal. Was it how delicious it was? How beautifully presented? How healthy? Maybe the environment and the people you were having that meal with? Or all of that together? Chances are that you did not pick that meal because it honored your hunger at all. You picked that meal because it evoked emotion in you. You've been in what we call peak moments. I'm going to share with you one of my favorite meal stories. So I live in Paris, and 3 months ago, I went to Stockholm for a business trip. And since I lived in Stockholm for about 9 years, I took the opportunity to meet with some ex-colleagues and friends from Spotify and Skype and Google. And so we met at a place called Griffin's. It's quite a nice place, by the way, reputed for the great food and service. But to be honest with you, I do not remember what we ate. I do remember, though, one particular moment. A moment that we all secretly hate. The bill. Yes. Are we going to split evenly, or are we paying separately? Who had wine? Who did not? And as I was thinking about all these awkward thoughts, the waiter came and she placed a piece of paper with a QR code. So we all curiously took our phone, we scanned the QR code, and boom. Actually, you could see the entire bill displayed on the screen. You can select from the screen. You can pay in a complete, smooth, and easy way. For me, it was the very first time I experienced that. And to be honest with you, it turns what was supposed to be an awkward moment into almost an enjoyable and delightful payment experience. And as we went out of Griffin, we were not talking about the food or the service. We were again talking about that surprise that we got at the end. So why am I telling you this story? I'm sharing this story because I truly believe that for a product to stand out and to succeed, and more particularly now in such a crowded digital market, it is extremely important to not only solve the functional needs of the users, like the food and the service. You need to go beyond and create something that triggers emotion and create what we call the emotional connection. Now you should be wondering, why am I so convinced? First, because I experienced that firsthand. I had the privilege to work on globally used and loved products across the globe, like Skype. A special dedicated for Skype. It was shut down last week. Yeah, it was an emotional moment. Anyway, Spotify, still there, hopefully for a much longer time. And of course, Google Meet and Chrome. And in addition to being a product leader and product manager in these companies, I always loved being on stage, as today. And one day, a conference organizer reached out to me and said, "Hey, Nesrine, we want you on stage for a keynote, but guess what? We have a specific topic for you." Believe me, for those who are speaking, we're not that familiar to these kind of requests. We usually bring our topic. But I said, "What do you want me to talk about?" And he said, "You know what? Since you've been an insider in such successful companies, what if you come and tell us what's in common? Have you seen anything in common while building product at Microsoft, Spotify, and Google?" I felt it was an interesting and challenging question to answer. I had no answer, by the way, at that time, so I sat down and I tried to find out, and I came to this conclusion. I came to the conclusion that yes, these companies have something in common in building their product. They invest heavily in the way of creating emotional connection between their product and users. So I have been experiencing that. I was doing it for more than 15 years. I was just not giving it a name. Now it's the opportunity for it. The second reason why I'm so convinced is because I was very lucky to find out a couple of weeks ago that research backed it up. Actually, giants like Capgemini, McKinsey, Deloitte, or even Harvard Business Review studied the exact same phenomenon, all the exact same thing. They studied the impact of emotional connection on product adoption. And by the way, these studies just happened within the last couple of years, so it's quite recent. And before even sharing with you the result of these studies, this by itself proves that there is a huge interest that the industry is putting in order to create different products. So what did they really study, by the way? They studied two groups of users. Group number one are users who are highly satisfied, which means they're having their needs fulfilled and their expectation met. They ask for something and they are getting it exactly how they want it to be. The second group of users, though, are the emotionally connected users, which means these are users who are having their needs anticipated and their expectation exceeded. You're surprising them with features before even the user is asking you for it. Now, it's time to reveal. I spent weeks trying to go through these reports. What did these reports show? What surprised me, and I was extremely happy to read through it, is that these studies has a consistent result. There is a huge consistency. They show impact on 3 key product metrics. Number 1, retention. Emotionally connected users are 50% more loyal. They will use your product longer and they stay more loyal with you. Metric number 2, revenues. Of course, emotionally connected users are twice more likely to buy more products and services from you. And of course, referral or word of mouth. Because when we are emotionally connected with the product, we're 60% more likely to actively talk about the product among our friends, families, and colleagues. So you see, this is by itself proving again that we should invest into this type of products. So in addition to my career at Microsoft, Google, and Spotify, I wanted to explore other companies like non-B2C, like hardware, software, and even like B2B, B2C. So I interviewed many of these companies, product leaders from these companies. I asked them the following question: how do you invest in emotional connection in your product? And actually there was no surprise, because when I interviewed these leaders, they all said that they invest in a way or another into creating emotional connection. What I noticed though, out of these interviews, is that there is no consistent way or structured way for doing it. So that's why I'm here to propose the delight process. So why delight? I'm calling it delight because delight is again an emotion. And as we are in the product world, we talk a lot about we should delight our users. The problem is we don't know how to delight them. So this is how. So the delight process, as every product process, operates in the 2 spaces, the opportunity space and the solution space. It's really important to distinguish between the 2 spaces, by the way, because the opportunity space is where we explore opportunities. We don't know if that's valid or not. And the solution space is when we are convinced that there is an opportunity and we should solve for it. The delight process is a process that operates in 4 steps, and I'm going to walk you through these 4 steps one by one so you know how to use it and hopefully you can bring it home with you. Step number 1, identifying motivators. So as for every product we're trying to build, it's extremely important to say, who are we building it for? But to do so, of course, we need to segment our users. How do we segment our users? There are different ways of doing it. First way is to do demographic segmentation. Not the most effective one, meaning that who are our users, their age, their gender, their location, their language. Second type is the behavioral segmentation, which means how they use the product. Are they using it in a certain way? Are they using it in a certain time? And my very best is the motivational segmentation. Because you know what? We do not use this, it's the same product, but we don't use it the same way, or not for the same reason. We do have different reasons for using the product. So it's important to understand and identify the different whys behind using a certain product. And that's what I call the motivational segmentation. It's important to know that there are two types of motivation or motivators. There are the functional motivators and there are the emotional motivators. Let me explain. Functional motivators are more or less like goal-oriented. I want to send an SMS. I want to book a flight. I want to listen to music. So it's related to solving a problem or doing it in an efficient way, or sometimes related to ease of use. The emotional motivator is a little bit more complicated to identify because users themselves, sometimes they're not even aware about them. Sometimes I listen to music because I want to feel less lonely. As we said, it's about noise, but it's also sometimes because I want to feel more productive. Does it happen to you? Like I want to work, so I want to put some music independently of what noise is behind? Because I want to self-express myself or whatever. Also note that there are two types of emotional motivators. There is the personal motivator, which means how user want to feel while using the product. Think about it, how the user want to feel while using the product. The social motivator, though, is how the user want others to feel about them while using the product. Sometimes you want to use Spotify because you want to be part of the vibe or you want to be part of something. You don't want to miss out, you want to feel connected. Think about buying a Ferrari, even if nobody had a Ferrari probably here, but sometimes it's for the performance, but also sometimes it's for... Okay. As we spoke a lot about Spotify, I do have a case study for you. In order to understand these motivators, I'm going to share with you some example of functional motivators and emotional motivators. So among the functional motivators, we can think about, I go to Spotify app because I want to enjoy high quality music, or because I want to search for a specific audio content. I heard about a track from Taylor Swift, so I need to go and check it out. Or, which happens a lot to me, I go to Spotify because I'm looking to be inspired. I have no idea what I want to listen to. Inspire me. It's about discovering new content. So these are some examples of functional motivators. Could be much longer, by the way. This is just for illustrating the concept. Emotional motivators are different. Could be like, I want to feel immersed. I want to feel connected. I want to express myself. I want to change my mood. Got it, right? It's a long list. Now the question is, how can I identify these emotional motivators? And no surprise, I'm not going to give you a magic wand to get that out. It's through asking users, through users' insight. The closer you get to your users, the more empathy you spend on these interviews, the more discovery you can get on those motivators. The only hint I can give you now is while talking to your users, pay attention to their emotion, not just their pain and needs and requests. You can ask questions like, how do you feel when you first started using the product? Walk me through the journey while using the product and describe your feeling throughout the journey. Pay attention to that. I have an example for you. I worked for Google Chrome for a couple of years, and I was working on one of the biggest challenges of Google Chrome. What is it? Tabs. Of course. Managing tabs. How can we help users navigate through their tabs? And more particularly for mobile. I was addressing the challenge for Chrome iOS. And we see from data that people sometimes have hundreds of tabs open. And I was like, how the hell can they really navigate through that all? So we had to address that, because first it started as a functional challenge. We don't want as an app to have you 500 tabs open. I mean, it takes memory and speeds and takes space. So, and also we want you to be able to navigate through your tabs in an easier way. So I interviewed many users. We sat with users, we set a lot of users interview, and I was asking them to show me how they navigate through their tab and how they can find a specific tab in their tab grids. And I love these moments because there's always a surprise out of these moments. People, of course, felt frustrated sometimes. Some of them felt ashamed, not for the content of the tab, as you may think of, but of the quantity. Exactly. Some of them had to say, sorry, I usually don't have so many tabs open. Okay, someone is hiding here. I'm not blaming anyone.
For more than 1,000, there is just a smile.
More than 100. 100.
100?
Yes.
Okay.
So you have a smile.
I don't, but my wife.
Okay, then probably 1,000 in that case. Okay, so it was a great opportunity, of course, to understand the situation, but also understand the feeling that it generates by being in such a situation. I promise, I'm going to get back to you by the end of this presentation on how we solved that, because I want to move to the second step of the process. Once you identify the motivators, it's time to convert those into opportunities, like real product opportunities. It was just the first step, by the way. And I do have a second story to share with you. So I joined Google Meet exactly at the exact right time when COVID hit Europe. What a great time. Especially for Google Meet, by the way, because it was a special time, like from a scale perspective. We all moved from having meetings in offices, clinics, classrooms, to 100% remote. And of course, we had to make sure and address the fact that the scale works. But me as a product manager, believe it or not, I spent months, like at least 3-4 months, trying to understand what's the emotional impact created by this new behavior or this new ways of working. So again, what did I do? I sit with users and we did a lot of users interview, asking them about what's the emotional impact of such a new habit, how they feel with such a new thing. And of course, a lot of things surfaced during this interview. Sometimes funny, but most of them are quite sometimes revealing of a big pain. People said, like, I feel there's less interaction. I feel lonely. I want to protect my privacy. I want to feel heard. I want to feel present. But to summarize the finding, these are the 3 things that I can summarize probably. People felt boredom. People felt low interaction. And there was even a name that was created during that period, Zoom fatigue. To be honest, I was happy it was called Zoom fatigue. I guess you know why. It's always better to put it on the competitor when it's negative, particularly. Okay, so once we have these demotivator in this case, what do? We have to convert them into real product opportunities. And I love the how might we statement, very simple, but also very to the point, where in this case, it will look like something, how might we improve meeting experience for participants in prolonged online meeting in order to maintain their engagement and reduce their sense of boredom. And what we did as a team, we sit together, we tried to brainstorm on a lot of ideas, and we came to the following. We created reactions, or what we call emoji reactions, because we felt like writing comment is not that obvious, and muting yourself to say that I agree or I disagree felt invasive and annoying for the speaker. But this is like a way of feeling like I'm present, but in a lightweighted way. And by the way, this feature got a lot adopted. People loved it so much. They even requested more emojis to reflect more emotions, and it was a great sign of success. Now, we're moving to the second space, which is the solution space. Once you have identified the opportunity, how can we convert those into delightful solutions? And I'm pretty sure if you work in an engineering organization, you do have plenty of brilliant mind and brilliant engineers who can come up with a lot of solutions and a lot of ideas. The question is, how can I know if it's a delightful solution or not? And that's why I have a tool that I created out of my experience that I call the delight grid. So what is the delight grid? The delight grid is a simple grid that represents the emotional motivator on the top and the functional motivator on the vertical side. Do you remember the motivator we spoke about at the first step? Emotional and functional motivator. All you have to do, once you've done your exercise right, you will write them down on this grid. Why? Because when you pick your features or your solution that you think about building, you will have to place them in this grid based on what emotion or function does it solve for. For example, feature 2 is solving for an emotional motivator 2. Feature 1 is solving for a functional motivator, but no emotional motivator. Now, how does it help? First, it helps in connecting every feature to real users' need, but also it helps in categorizing features. Why? If your feature is solving only for a functional motivator, then it belongs to what I call low delight category. If your feature is solving only for an emotional motivator, then it belongs to the surface delight. And ta-da! If it happens that you have a feature that is solving for both emotional and functional motivator, then you're in that sweet spot that I call the deep delight. Case study again. It always helps to have some example, right? Okay. So I've been at Spotify for about 4 years and a half, and I get chance to work on some of the most known features that shape the brand and the personality of the product. Some of them is Discover Weekly, you know, this weekly personalized playlist that you get. Search by lyric, which is the opportunity of searching for a track without knowing the exact title, so you will put some random words based on what you know. Normalization, which is actually a feature that we built within my team. Actually, when we receive songs from artists, we receive them with different level of volume. But if you want to have a playlist, you don't want to have different volume. It's very annoying. So what we do is that we normalize the volume so that in your playlist, it looks very smooth. Of course, Wrapped, the famous retrospective end of year that you receive at the end of the day, at the end of the year, to see how cool you are. And Jam was an interesting feature, by the way, that we developed in order to allow you to listen to music in a connected way, like with friends. Feels like an audio room, so you listen together mode. And my favorite, Star Wars lightsaber. Actually, it's a feature that turns the progress bar into a lightsaber, particularly for Star Wars themed track. I mean, it's a seasonal thing. You will not find it if it's not a Star Wars day. Anyway, why am I telling you about these examples? Because we're going to go ahead and place them in the delight grid. So, you remember the motivators in the first case study where we said we want to enjoy high quality, discover new content, and search for content. We placed those on the functional motivator. And I did the same for the emotional motivator. Now we're going to place the feature. A feature like normalization is a pure functional feature. It doesn't impact anything from an emotional side. Same for search by lyric. Actually, it helps you search for a content, but there is no emotional impact. However, features like Star Wars lightsaber or Wrapped, do you agree with me if I say there is no functional need for them? Yeah, so they are surface delight. On the other side, features like Discover Weekly or Spotify Jam, these are like allows you to search or just discover new content, but in a personalized way or in a connected way, so it's in the deep delight. Don't get me wrong. I'm not here to say that you should only build deep delight or surface delight. Actually, the success of big company comes from the fact that they create a bouquet of the 3 types of delight. Your roadmap have to have a bit of low delight, a bit of deep delight, and a bit of surface delight in order to create that brand and that personality and that emotional connection that we want to achieve. And if I tell you about Wrapped, for example, just Wrapped, that feature that is absolutely not functional, and you do agree with me on that, it contributed in the app downloads significantly. I guess like wrapped by itself, just 20% app download in 2020, which is enormous for a Surface Delight type of feature, right? Okay. Now, you should tell me, okay, Nesrine, this sounds great, but what if I do the Delight Grid tomorrow and I figure out that all my features are low delight? Which is probably true. Good news is that you don't have to start from scratch. I'm going to share with you some what I call delight enhancers that you can take home, you can apply in your product, because some of the best companies are applying it today to differentiate themselves. Number one, of course, personalization. We love our name on the Starbucks cup, right? I mean, Starbucks don't call you number 35 or 68 or whatever. They struggle to write our names because our name is extremely familiar for us. It creates that connection. And by the way, it's not only about our name, it's about our taste, our setting. And that's why features like Discover Weekly or Netflix recommendation are so popular and successful. Enhancer number two is an interesting one, which is celebration. Actually, when we're using product, it's a journey. And within that journey, you have some peak moment, like joyful moment, and you have some valley moment, or not that fun moments. So if the product can interact in that valley moment to make it less as a struggle, or interact in these peak moments and make them even more enjoyable, then these moments turns to become like memorable. And I have this example for you, like the Airbnb example, because I'm an Airbnb user as a host and as a guest. And as a host, I do have one particular goal, which is to remain superhost. I love being superhost, and I do my best to remain superhost. And you know what? Airbnb reassessed my superhost ability every 3 months. So every 3 months, I'm getting an email from Airbnb saying, you deserve staying superhost, or you did great. Of course, based on review and so many other criteria. And I'm telling this story because every 3 months, if I remain in Superhost, when I open the app turns into confetti. And even if it may sound surface, honestly, it feels like the app is celebrating this for me. It recognizes the effort, and I like this moment. It's a moment of connection with the app. Enhancer number 3. It's my favorite, by the way. It's about, I want you to pay attention to this, because honestly, it's the best again. It's about asking yourself, how would that experience could be better if it was replaced by a real human being? A couple of weeks ago, I sat with the head of growth from Dyson. That's why you see the Dyson logo here. And it happens that I have a Dyson vacuum cleaner at home that I love. I don't know why, but I love even showing it to my guests when I have guests at home. And I said, hey, Andy, how do you do to create products that are vacuum cleaner that we love? And he said something quite interesting. He said, we do not compare our vacuum cleaner to the competitors. We do compare our vacuum cleaner to how it would have been done better if it was done by a real human. Think about cleaning your house, for example. If you hire someone to clean your house, you will probably tell that person, start with a certain room, clean in a certain way. So they got inspired by this way of recommendation and they added it into the product. That's one way of humanizing the product. And while talking with Andy, I actually realized that that's exactly how we did at Google Meet. We do not compare Google Meet to Zoom or Teams, but we do compare to how it would have been done better if we were all sitting in the same room, right? And if you start thinking that way, you take your product to a higher level. So think about your product and say, how, if the product was done by a real human, how would that real human would have done better compared to our product? My last enhancer for today is the seasonality, because probably it's the cheapest and the easiest way to integrate. There is, of course, the personal seasonality. Like the other day, I received a notification on my Apple Watch saying, happy birthday, Nesrine. Personal, interesting, made me smile. But at the same time, while working at Google Meet, we played with the community seasonality a lot. So we had, of course, the permanent background, but we had the seasonal background. So we had like a Christmas background, Easter background, Diwali background, Ramadan background, even Olympic game background when it was the opportunity for it. And we've seen that these kind of background could create high engagement and high adoption. So you can see peaks, and these peaks impact the general growth. All right. I promised to get back to the story of Chrome. So remember, it was a functional problem, but at the same time, some emotion were raised out of that challenge. So it was for us completely no way to go ahead and close some tabs for users. Users will kill us. They will hate us. It's very important for them, tabs. So we just created the inactive tabs. It's a tab group that will hold all the tabs that have not been opened and visited for more than 21 days. So if you have an iPhone, you should see it now. And even if it does not impact so much the big impact that we've seen is that it's cleaner tab grid, and people can easily navigate through their tabs. And there is an emotional impact that they are a bit organized. So that's what I have to say about that. I left Google, by the way, few weeks after we launched this feature, so I don't have exact metric to share about how this impact was adopted. But the funny story is that a couple of weeks ago, I was helping my dad with some tab things on his phone, and he said something interesting. He said, I don't know what Chrome did, but it feels easier for me to navigate through my tabs. And I was like, I think I know what they did, which is great. Now, as I said, I left Google about a year ago, and I left Google with a mission to talk about this concept of delight, the concept of emotional connection, because I truly believe in the importance of that. But I quickly realized that it's much bigger than talks and workshops, and I started writing a book about delight. So I'm calling it Product Delight. It's probably coming next month, so I'm doing my best to make it happen on time. It's a storybook, as I'm calling it, a lot of product stories in them, stories from my own, but also from a lot of leaders that I get chance to interview. So stay tuned. And now, as we're closing, I know we're out of time, but I want to leave you with 3 key messages. Number 1, delight is not a nice to have. It's not a buzzword. It's not the cherry on the top. It is a must-have. We've seen it. It has a huge impact on differentiating your product. The second, delight drives impact. Yes, and I told you, retention, revenue, referral, it can have a huge impact on your product metrics. And now, delight is actionable because you have a process. It's a step-by-step process that is actionable, that you can apply and you can try it out. And by the way, when working on this process, something that I was extremely obsessed about, I really wanted to be applicable on all cases, because I heard some people coming to me and say, yeah, but Nesrine, this is a B2C thing. I don't see it applying in the B2B words. I do not agree, because if your product is being used by a human being, then we are in the B2H space, business to human. And they need and they deserve their emotion to be honored. With that, I'm getting to the end of my talk. Here's a QR code for the slide if you need them. Also, it brings you to my newsletter about delight tips, where I share regular stories and tips about delights. And maybe also a way to stay tuned with the book. Otherwise, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to chat.